So, you are a failure. In fact, everybody in here is an unmitigated disaster failure. You for sure, you, and all of you are unmitigated, smashing successes. I hate the word failure. I cannot stand it. It's mean, it's cruel, it's vicious, it's limiting, and both as a verb to fail and certainly as an adjective. Failure. Then we have success, which we use just as liberally, even though it is not failure's anthem. We use these all the time to evaluate and to judge how it is that we're doing, or how somebody else is doing, or how we perceive it is somebody is doing. I live in the sports world, and I have for more than 20 years. One of the great things about sports is that it provides these evaluations for us just like that. Win, lose. Winner, loser. Success, failure. Hero, goat, championship, obscurity. That's what sports does. Life is full of a lot more grays than just that. And as I sat there and I pontificated these definitions of these words that we use so often, I thought, well, what is it really? And I'm sitting there on my computer, and I look down at a piece of paper that I've seen no less than about a billion times, and it's this. Anybody familiar with sports, or even those unfamiliar with sports, is certainly familiar with this. This is your average, random, run-of-the-mill tournament-style bracket. And virtually every month of the calendar year, there is a bracket somewhere with some sporting event going on. And here in about 2 weeks, office productivity is going to come to a screeching halt all across this great land because this bracket is going to screw up everybody's lives for about 2 weeks. It is the NCAA tournament bracket, and it is full, or will be filled, with the names of 68 teams, all with the same aspiration and hope, and that is to finish first, to be success, to be the champion. Hallelujah. All 68 teams will be assigned a seed, one essentially through 68. Number one seed, the best. You got the best shot. You should finish near the top, if not the top. Statistically, you're the best. 68 seed. Well, it is a tremendous achievement that you are even on this bracket. You are a success just by being here on the bracket. You got a shot, the same theoretical shot as the number one seed. Got to hit a few shots, get a little lucky, work really, really hard. Maybe some things are going to have to go your way that you certainly have no control of, and you might just do it. Well, that's sports. This is sports, right? Brothers and sisters, this is life. It is your life. It's my life. Right now, every one of us, whether we see it or not, is on a bracket somewhere doing all the time. It's just a question of whether or not we choose to acknowledge it. Because one of the great things about sports, and one of the reasons I like it, or like them, is because they provide a model, inspiration, hope, parallels, and analogies for life. You don't have to know anything about basketball, kickball, baseball, hockey, soccer, golf, tennis, anything about it. And you can appreciate some of the analogies and parallels gleaned from sports that you can apply to your life right now, like this bracket. It can be your life, if you want it to be. In my professional career, I was fortunate enough to interview some people who survived and thrived, navigated savagely competitive brackets. I've been very fortunate to interview them and even get to know some of them. I'm talking about people who have survived in brackets such as the world of professional sports, professional entertainment, and corporate America. When I had to say, well, how am I going to pick some of these examples that I've had had a chance to glean over the years. I just had to sort of settle on a few. I'm going to start with this guy. This guy here is somebody you probably recognize, and you don't even need for me to tell you his name, but I'm going to just in case. This is actor and comedian Kevin Hart, a man who's so successful, so popular, that he sells out stadiums and arenas all over the world because of his comedy act. A man who's so successful in the exceptionally difficult world of Hollywood entertainment that his name goes above the title of a movie. His bracket ain't 68 teams. His bracket is more like 6,800,000 competitors. And he's made it to the very, very top. And one of the reasons I picked Kevin Hart, no different than the rest of these people, is because he was not a 1 seed, 1 to 2 or 5, and he certainly wasn't the very bottom. He's no different than you or I. He's someplace in the middle. In fact, he's probably closer to the bottom. He was born and raised in Philadelphia. Upbringing was less than ideal. His father was in and out of his life, not really there at all. He was a drug addict. From high school, and for a little while, he went to junior college before he set out on his own in New York City. And to do it, to make ends meet, he was a shoe salesman. Then he stumbled into a comedy routine, a comedy act, and one of the most successful, lucrative careers in Hollywood. And when I had a chance to talk to him, I said, Kevin, if you could go back and give advice to your 19-year-old self, what would you tell yourself? And he took a deep breath and he said, first of all, you got to know you're going to hear a million more no's than you will a single yes. But all of those no's are preparing you for something that no one can be smart enough, savvy enough, or wise enough from where it is that you want to go, from what it is that you want to do. If you let that person do that, or persons do that, or those no's do that, you've already lost. Game over. I'm going to hold this instead. So, as he moved forward in thinking about this, he paused and he said, listen, this is what you've got to know. All these no's are doing something for you, and what they're doing is preparing you for yes. This next guy here, he didn't hear a lot of yeses in his life. Not from the man upstairs for a while, and not from anyone. This is the 2015 American League Baseball Manager of the Year. He is Jeff Bannister. In 2015 to 2016, he led the Texas Rangers to American League West Division titles. His bracket as a manager of a big league baseball team is actually more difficult than to become a U.S. Senator. Your odds of being a big league baseball manager are greater than to become an elected senator. And I think I can speak on behalf of just about everybody in this room. We think most big league managers will probably be better than the senators that we've currently elected. Too easy, sorry. So Jeff Bannister was a manager for 4 seasons. And unfortunately, he met a fate most big league managers do when he was fired last September. He's currently working for Pirates. And by any definition, this man is a success. Any definition. Even if on his bracket, it doesn't necessarily say it. Because Jeff Bannister shouldn't even be here. He should be dead. He's born a blue baby. Made it. High school, he's playing baseball, and he goes to the doctor, and he gets a diagnosis, and the prognosis is amputation of the leg just above the right knee. So he had choices, and they decided to have surgery, and another one, and another one, and another one, and in over a year and a half, and more than 15 surgeries later, saved the knee, and he walked. Then he played baseball again, and he went to junior college. Most guys who play high school baseball don't go on to play junior college ball. They're done. He made it. Except during his college career, his junior college career, he sustained an injury in a collision at home plate that was so severe it left him paralyzed. Doctors feared that any movement as sudden and as benign as a sneeze would leave him paralyzed for life. So he's in a hospital bed, not sitting up because he's paralyzed. He's lying down, surrounded by family and loved ones, all of whom are crying, sad about the condition of their loved one. And he's the one making them feel better. He's the one comforting them. So he goes home, sitting in a wheelchair. All those friends and loved ones who were there with him that day, they still love him, but they've got a life to lead, and they have moved on. So he's got a choice. He can get up, or he can be okay with where he is, wheelchair, alive. Beats your alternative. He got up, and he walked, and he kept walking. And eventually, he earned a baseball scholarship to the University of Houston. And in 1990, he did something most people who ever pick up a ball and a bat never accomplish when he was called up to join the big league roster of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He made it to the big leagues, and he got a hit. Even if Jeff Bannister had had no physical ailments, the percentages of him achieving that, 0.5%. 0.5%. He's never going to the Hall of Fame. He will never go to the All-Star game. He will never sign a $300 million contract. Jeff Bannister is a success, even if he never achieved it to the end of his bracket. Married, 2 kids, bunch of dogs, a good life that he worked at to make for himself. And I asked him, I said, Jeff, if you could give advice to people who are struggling to get out of their own head, to figure out how to be successful, to achieve professionally, academically, maybe lose the last 15 pounds, to achieve what they want to on their bucket list, but they just can't. They just can't. What would you tell them? And he stopped and he took a deep breath and he said, the first thing you've got to do is that it's okay to be scared. It is okay to feel fear. Too often we are conditioned that when we sense fear, we put up a wall around it to make sure that that fear never gets in. And in doing so, it essentially paralyzes us. In Jeff's estimation, what fear needs to do is act as an alarm clock to kick us, to make us move forward, to go where it is that we want to go. That the focus cannot be the next 3 years, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 days, but the next 3 seconds. You've got to set yourself up to have some momentum, to move forward, to do that, so that one day when you are 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 years later, and you see how far you've come, even though there are going to be some tough moments, even he said there's going to be some hard times in there that you're not going to see coming, but when you're there, you can look back on it and say, what was I so afraid of? This young man didn't deal well with fear, but he understood it. And he understood that his players were scared. It's one of the misnomers about professional athletics a lot of times is how often these guys are scared. This guy wasn't. He is Pro Football Hall of Fame head coach Bill Parcells. His bracket of professional coaching is very challenging. It was so challenging in the 70s, he decided to get out of it, and he sold insurance, and actually was a season ticket holder of the Denver Broncos. His wife was so sick of him, she said, you need to go back to work coaching. So he did. Led the New York Giants to 2 Super Bowl victories. Had an assistant, you might know his name was Belichick. He led the New England Patriots to a Super Bowl appearance. Led the New York Jets to an AFC championship game. Led the Dallas Cowboys back to relevancy in the 2000s. Seemed to be impossible at the time. Joined the Pro Football Hall of Fame a few years ago. The man's legacy in the sport is eternal. His fingerprints are all over the game and the league. He is synonymous with coaching. And even though he was not Harvard educated, he knew people. And specifically, he knew what would inspire people. Pressure, 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 pressure. Bill loved sports, and he loved boxing. He loved boxing because boxing was a laboratory for human behavior. Boxing would reveal you, much like a bracket would reveal you, because sometimes success is just about being there and hanging on. Sometimes success is just not losing. Sometimes success is still retaining the ambition, the hope, and the desire and not giving up on it. Sometimes success on a certain day is just not quitting. And Bill had a descriptor for those people who weren't that. He called them game quitters. You probably know a game quitter or two. You might have experienced the joys of being a game quitter. The game quitter is the person in the ring who is more preoccupied with how it looks and how it seems than they are with the effort or the actual end result. They've already quit. So you have to ask yourself, as you go along with whatever it is that you're doing, are you really game? Are you game? Or are you a game quitter? There's a big difference. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Be game. This last guy I'm going to talk about is one of my all-time, if not my all-time favorite interview. You probably don't know his name. You very likely don't know who he is on site, but you certainly know his work. He is Dr. Jeffrey Wigand, and his bracket was corporate America. Back in the 80s and 90s, he was in product research and development for big companies. And he was hired by a powerful tobacco firm to design, I love this, the safer cigarette, because that's not a contradiction in terms. His bracket, he was successful, very successful. And it's here that you have to understand what real success is. How many times do you use the word success to describe somebody else, and what you're really talking about is money? Well, Jeff Wigand was wealthy, six-figure earner, didn't have to work very hard, played a heck of a lot of golf. He was a success. Kids, wife, could provide for him. He was a success. How many times have you used the term to describe somebody else? How's Terry? Oh, Terry's great. He's smashing success. He's making six figures. He's got a house in Colorado, skis, vacation all the time. Yeah, he's a bit of a mess. He's an alcoholic. He's addicted to opioids. He doesn't see his kids, but he's a success. He's a success. Well, Jeff Wigand was a success. Not that he was any of those other things, but here was the problem. In order to be a success, he had to lie. While he's sitting there providing cover for the tobacco companies, Jeffrey Wigand, really what he was doing was willingly looking the other way for an industry that was in fact trying to create a product even more lethal than already previously existed. And he decided, I can't do this. So he blew the whistle. Jeff Wigand blew the whistle on the tobacco industry, an industry that had never lost in court, ever, until he decided to come forward and tell the truth. His life was the inspiration for the movie that was nominated for Best Picture, The Insider, starring Russell Crowe and Al Pacino. It's a great movie. But his story is so much bigger than that. It's about success not necessarily being tied to one thing. It's about a guy who decided, you know what, I'll create a different bracket for my own life. It's about success saying that I don't need to have all this money to be a success. He was making less than $40,000 a year as a high school teacher. And he was a success because he changed the world. How many times do you go places now you can't even see anybody smoking, whereas anybody over a certain age, 40 and above, remembers when we could smoke cigarettes on airplanes or bars or restaurants or anywhere without this guy's testimony, without his truth, without his knowledge. None of that changes. He did it. And in the mid-90s, it was his testimony, his gumption, his ability to look at his life and say, I need to get off of this, that led to the United States government settling with the tobacco industry for a record $246 billion. He didn't have to do it. So as I sat there and I talked to him, I said, Doctor, why did you do it? He said, I just wanted to regain my moral compass. Wow. And in doing so, he changed the world. Kevin Hart, Jeff Bannister, Bill Parcells, Jeff Wigand. None of these people were one seeds. All of them are successes. All of them have endured failures and losses, just like you and I. Go out, create your bracket. Write down where it is that you want to go. As you can see here, no one starts on a bracket just advancing to nowhere. You've got to know where it is that you're going. Write it down. Don't be afraid to create one, to start a new one. Do it. It is so important to your life, to our community, and to the world that you do. All of these people do. And that way, you will know how you can define what failure is. Your definition, not mine, not anybody else's, as well as success. But just keep in mind the one thing that Jeff Wigand taught me that should teach everybody else. Your bracket is what you do. It's not who you are. Thank you so much.